Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts.
Selector George.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
We continue our coverage of The Heroes, Joe's second standalone, and the next First Law entry. And we cover Good Deeds, One Day More, and Bones. So, let's get started. What was that noise?
Nothing, Jeffrey,
What?
my bad.
What'd you
I think it was just Harrison saying bones after you said bones.
Oh my God. Well, want to thank you, the audience, as usual, for your support, your continued support. We appreciate it. We rely upon it. We depend upon it for our sustenance. So please continue on. I am currently trying to discover the will to live. So apologies, but we shall march forward in the good name of the
On to victory for the Union!
The war must go on.
for his august majesty.
That's a shame that we had to complete this book by the in a winter.
Yeah,
We're on track to get there, aren't we?
we are. And then Red Country. Anyway. So let's we just want to continue to thank you for your continued support as usual. Make sure you join us on our YouTube page. Follow us there, subscribe, follow us on the social medias. Apparently the TikToks has been banned, but might come back to life. Not so sure. We're not even I think we haven't been on TikTok since you made a couple of videos.
Wait,
right?
what?
Right, Harrison?
It was a good 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The last got updated.
So we're not affected by the ban, but the rest of the world is apparently.
we have no excuse for YouTube. We haven't posted on there in ages either. But that's still not
We're pieces of shits. So let's just move on to our next segment, which is our community interaction segment, boys.
Well, as usual, we think we're going to take all the credit for the House of the Meme Maker even posting. They must be listening to us if they're posting. No one else is. But we're still going on with that, and they still need people to fill in the chapters, and it's a good way to interact with the community. So recommend getting on there and keep memeing every chapter.
That's right. You join that little competition and you meme away.
Well, I'll say it's really it at the moment. I mean, there's not a lot going on. The Devils are still a good couple of months out now. Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Everybody, keep listening. Keep posting.
We will
on
keep this community alive.
We're me and Jeffrey are planning to go and visit you, aren't we, Harrison, in a couple of months' time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Won't say when or where, just in case someone plans to stalk us and murder us or something. But
Let them try. I live in
let's
Oklahoma.
just say
I
that's what
carry
it is.
every
I was,
day.
I was
sons
going to
of
say
bitches.
it rhymes with Oklahoma.
Harrison's got something that rhymes with buns, and he does have buns. I'll tell you that. He's got buns for days.
Whoa, Jeffrey, on the podcast? Anyways, yes, they will be visiting me in Little Oklahoma, and I'm very excited, and wife's very excited. We are really excited to see each other. It seems like it'll probably end up being like, hopefully not, but it'll end up being every 2 years we'll get to all see each other.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, last year we missed, we skipped. Times are tough, but things are looking up, and I think we can probably visit George next year.
I hope so.
Hopefully.
I hope so.
Yeah.
If the UK hasn't collapsed by then, maybe. I don't know.
If society as a whole has a collapse,
Yeah. We'll find a way. get a boat over or something.
we'll still record in the face of collapsing civilization. We'll still record. But yeah. All right. So let's move on to our first chapter. Read through. Boom, boom, boom. This is Good Deeds, folks. Good Deeds, and we start off from the perspective of Herndon Craw. And he is accompanying Finnery and the 60 Union prisoners of war, as well as Shivers, right? They're going through Ostrong. They're making their way towards the bridge. And he looks at Finnery and goes, wow, she's a pretty girl, unlike wonderful. And he asked her. He asked her if
Damn.
she's all right. What? Just say. He asked her.
It's kind of rude if you put it in that context, isn't it? It's just like, wow, this one's actually pretty, not like the other bitch.
Well, I didn't write this. Okay, Joe did. So I'm just saying what Joe said. All right. Uh, Crawl asked Fenrir if she's all right. She could be worse. And then she goes, just out of curiosity, if she wasn't all right, what could Crawl do about it? And Crawl goes, not much. And he goes, yeah, I figured. So he leaves Finri and Shivers and the prisoners behind a little bit because he's got to, make his way across the bridge unarmed, hands up. He's like, he's got to do that whole thing. And I like how when he gives Shivers his sword and everything and his shield, he goes, if I get shot, wait for me. And Shivers just nods and he goes, a river. Shivers he's funny in his own way. And so he starts walking over the bridge, Crawl, and he's muttering to himself like, I'm doing the right fucking thing, stupid fucking Crawl, fucking Christ, I'm too old for this. And then we hear a voice in Northern call out saying, that's far enough. And Crawl's like, yeah, I can't agree more, just wanted to talk. And then the guy responds, he says, oh, well, the last time we talked, it didn't really come out too well for anybody involved. And Crawl's smiling because this is the return of Hardbread. Yay! Woo!
Hi, Hardbread.
These guys just got to stop meeting like this.
Yeah, for real. So Crawl's like, what the fuck are you doing here? He goes, well, a lot of the Dogman's boys are here. A stranger come knocking, showed up without an invite, so we've been politely showing them the door. Nice. And
it's actually kind of, if you think about it, like, we know the Dogman doesn't have that many guys, so I'm wondering how the logistics, like what they're doing to get rid of them, because we know that the Wildmen have like 2,000 guys, right? So
yeah, but it's the Dogman and the Union. So I imagine the Dogman has like
That's
a couple hundred. He has a couple hundred at least, right?
yeah, for sure, at least, yeah,
Maybe
1,000, something like that.
Maybe, right? Something like that. And I like how when Crawl says, yeah, I got some prisoners that Dow is handing back. Hardbread goes, what? Dow? Handing anything back? Get the fuck out of here. So Hardbread's like, all right. And he, turns over his shoulder, says something in Union, the common tongue, I guess we could say. And a young man comes up, strapping lad, possibly high up in the rankings with all the markings. He nods to Crawl and everything, and then he looks, his jaw drops, and Crawl hears running footsteps behind him. He's, what the fuck? And then it's Finri ran right into the young man's arms. They hug and kiss and everything. It's hell. It's
beautiful.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And then I like how Hardbread and Crawl was like, well, that was unexpected. And Hardbread's like, maybe men and women just greet each other like that all the time in the Union. He could see that, there's like a lot of like love there. Hal's like whispering sweet nothings in her ear. He doesn't even know what Hal's saying. But Crawl goes, this feels good.
He's probably saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you.
Yeah, Crawl's like, this feels good. Making a few folk happier in the middle of all this, it feels real damn good. Makes you wonder why anyone chooses to do what we do. And then Hardbread goes, well, too coward to do anything else, really.
Ouch.
Yeah, ouch.
Yeah, I mean,
Hardbread's got the right of it.
Yeah, Hardbread like knows, like it's interesting is obviously we don't know if all the Dogman's boys are like this, but it seems like everybody that we see on the Dogman side at this point, they're all just like, yeah, we're in a war, and we just don't really think that what's going on is right, but we're kind of bad too. Like they all have the Dogman's ideology, it feels like, and it's not bad. I mean, Hardbread is totally right in basically thinking that that they're cowards for it. It's interesting that he has the bones to say that, and Craw is kind of just like, oh, it's what it is. I'm a soldier. do 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 do.
Yeah. I mean, what else are you gonna do when you're in the north, right? There's not much. You
What?
could farm.
Well,
You could farm.
somebody has to be the first person to not do that.
Well, yeah, but I think fighting is pretty much the only thing they can do.
That's fucked up, Jeff.
What? It's not like they have
That's
It's not like
racist.
it's not like they have cobblers over there.
They do have cobblers.
Oh, please.
They get the shoes from somewhere, don't they?
Hey, patch together.
You're trying to get me to spoil something, aren't you? You bastard.
Okay, fine. So anyway, him and Hardbread, they say their goodbyes, and he goes back to Shivers' crawl, and he notices that Shivers. He basically asked Shivers, "Hey, with that eye, that metal ball, you ever thought about a patch?" And Shivers tells him, he tried one for a bit, but it itched like crazy. And then he thought, why should I wear a patch to make other people more comfortable if it makes me uncomfortable, right? He goes, if I can live with having this face, then they can live with looking at it. And that's a good point, right? Right? Fuck
that, or they can get fucked.
It's interesting to me that Shivers did in fact say he tried to wear a patch, because with his ideology the way it's been, you would think that he would never wear a patch now.
Yeah,
I
mean, I imagine it might have been when he came back to the north for the first time, and all
everyone's like, "Ugh."
oh, Jesus Christ, what happened to you?
Yeah, maybe.
So Crawl does then, as they're walking away, Crawl tells him, he's like, sorry for taking the job as second of Dow, second for Dow. He says, more than likely you should have had it. And Shiver says, I'm not greedy. I've seen greedy, and it's an easy way to die. I just want what's owed, no more, no less, a little respect. And Crawl, that seems reasonable. Crawl says, it doesn't seem too much to ask. I'll be doing it only for the battles on anyway. After that, I dare say, Dow will want you for a second. And then Shivers goes, maybe. And then he looks at Crawl and he goes, you're actually a decent man, aren't you? You're a straight edge. That's what people say. So how do you do it? How do you stick to it? And then Crawl just kind of goes, I just try to do the right thing, I reckon. Hook yuck. And then
I love how people will be like, man, Crawl, you really know what you're doing. And he's like he never admits that he does know what he's doing, but he never has anything profound to actually add to anything. He's just like, I don't know. I'm just myself, I guess. And because he says this to Shivers, he basically says, I don't know. I just tried to do my own thing. I tried to do the right thing. Shivers is like this was a chance for somebody to Shivers opens up slightly and it's like, what's your trick? And he could have come up or thought about something that would actually be helpful to Shivers, but instead he's like, whatever I think is right is what Shivers heard. And he's like, well, exactly then. And then I'm still walking the right path, and I have made no mistakes because I'm doing what I think is right because it's for me, and all that matters is you survive. And I really like that, because normally in these parts, an old man who's quote unquote a straight edge talking to a young man who has got a bad reputation, this is always where the young man goes, I didn't think of it that way. But because of how Crawl says it, and without any thinking at all, it has the opposite reaction. And I think that's very, very good writing on Joe's part for that little scene there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like you said, Crawl doesn't have anything profound to say, especially when Shiver says, I tried it. I tried doing it your way, and I just didn't see the point in the profit. There's no profit to it. And then it's about doing a good thing or the right thing just for the sake of it. Shivers, that concept is so foreign to Shivers now after Best Served Cold, right? After all that he went through, and I like the little callback here where it says Shivers turned the ring on his little finger thoughtfully round and round, redstone glistening. That's the ring that Monza gave him, and he goes just about getting through each day. It's another callback to the earlier conversation with Hardbread where Crawl says those are the times. It's like, really, are any times any different? Nah, right? It's always been the way it is, I would say. And then he hears someone call his own name. Crawl looks around, and it's Flood. Flood over here just limping all over the place, and he goes
hobbling.
Yeah, hobbling. Sorry. And then Crawl's like, hey, Shivers, right? Call Shivers. And Flood says, by reputation. And Shivers just smiles, I guess. And he says, it's a fucking beauty, ain't it? I guess his reputation. I don't know at this point. And then it kind of talks about the day with Ricci, and he says, it's been too bloody. I had a few lads calling me chief, too young, all but one back to the moon. So I know George has certain thoughts, but we'll get to that later. But so Flood tells him, listen, I thought I might come back over to your dozen if you'll have me and this one with me. And he points to a big lad in a stained green cloak with a good sword at his belt. He said he's a good hand, earned his name today. And Crawl congratulated him, but the kid didn't say anything. And then Flood's like, do you got room for us? He's like, yeah, I don't even remember having more than 10, and there's only just 6 now at this point. And so he's like, what the fuck? So he tells him that, Athric and Agric died, and then Brack died. I think Flood must have known Athric and Agric, so they must have been around.
A little spoiler, Flood's been inside of Crawl's crew for a long time. I mean, even back, 8 years ago is whenever the last trilogy ended. And we know that Flood was 100% with him before that time. He was part of the crew. And yeah, that would suck. I do feel for Flood here because, he's just like, really? He's dead? Really? Like, he's like in shock. And it would suck too, like, to had to know your friend that you were close with that just died. That's obviously war and stuff, but it's the first time, and I would say the only time we see Flood being like, oh, somebody died. Damn, that really sucks. All the boys he was with, they're like, oh, it is what it is. That's war, son. But now he's like, damn.
I mean, especially when it's something so seemingly inconsequential as well. Like you just get, you get a bit of a wound, and then 2 days later you're just sick and you die.
He didn't die gloriously, quote unquote.
Yeah, it wasn't glorious at all.
No, not. And Flood says like him dying is like it's a tester. Like he didn't think he'd ever die, and I guess it means like Flood just goes, Jesus Christ, everyone's just dropping, and I guess it's kind of like almost that despondency and might be creeping in. And then Craw says, the great leveler's lying in wait for all of us, no doubt, and he takes no excuses and makes no exceptions. And Shivers chimes in out of nowhere and goes, none. So, okay, Shivers, all right. but Craw, he accepts the pair of them. Mm-hmm. And then he says, but just letting you know that Wonderful's running the dozen for now because that, he's blacked out second. Just till the battle's over. And it's like, okay, cool. So
I always like the way that he says that as well. It's like, just till the battle's done, like it's a regular thing. It's like, oh, just this one, just this battle, it's fine.
I love that he says that too, and then like everybody I can imagine everyone's always looking at him like, sure, because Carl is not observant at all, really, and so people like, I know they're just giving him a look like, yeah, buddy, yeah, whatever.
Maybe, yeah. And then he asks for the kid's name, and it turns out to be our boy Beck. Clearly, obviously, he's the only one that survived out of Flood's entire crew. And then Flood goes, no, it's Red Beck. Don't you forget about that. and Crawl notices that, Beck looks like he was about to be a bit sick. And Crawl likes that. He goes, all right. He doesn't, doesn't need someone that's like all posturing and talking. He already has enough of that with Weirin and Wonderful. And the kid goes, Weirin a Bly? He goes, yep. And then Crawl asks Flood if I need to give Beck the big speech, the one that I gave you when you joined up, about looking out for your crew and your chief and not getting killed and doing the right thing and all that. And Flood looks at Beck and goes, you know what? I think today he learned the hard way. And Crawl goes, yeah, I guess we all did. Well, welcome to the dozen then, Red Beck. And the kid just blinks. And that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
I'm not going to give this too of a high one. It's very it's a bit introspective for Craw, and like you said, Harrison, like he does a lot of introspecting, but he doesn't actually think that much about anything. He's just like, no, definitely still doing the right thing. Yep, and that's it.
Well, except when he was crossing the bridge, and then he's like, can't believe I fucking want to say it. Do the right stupid fucking Craw.
Yeah, I reckon I'll definitely give this one a 3.
Yeah. Harrison?
I think I'm gonna do a 3 and a knuckle because I do like how he talks to Shivers and how like it's the opposite of what you think it would be, the result of it. And it is nice that to have this Crawl chapter where he's not just like with his dozen doing the same shit. Like he's kind of outside his comfort zone, and I like that. I like that. I always like it whenever characters are outside their comfort zone. So, but yeah, it's like you said, George. It's pretty. It's a pretty tame chapter, and it's interesting to see how, as the course of the book goes on, how Crawl seems like this great guy, and everyone's like, yeah, we respect you, and we'll back you up and stuff. But like, it's kind of like he's just fallen into that role, and he doesn't really know why. And it's interesting in of itself. And I wonder, like, how a lot of people in the community love Crawl, and I wonder how much that is because he's like a different kind of complex. He's like that. He's like a frat boy who became successful just because of who he knows, and he's kind of cool, and I don't know, I just think it's interesting.
Interesting thought process there on Crawl, the frat boy analogy. I never got that.
An old frat boy, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, he's the old frat boy who's like, yeah, I used to have a lot of fun back in the day, but now he still does the same shit though. He just acts like he's mature now, and it's not because he's lying to himself. He's just because he's not thinking like he never has.
Well, I mean, he talks. He does talk about when he was younger, he was a bit of a shit, but then he teamed up with Three Trees, right? And then Three Trees is the one that told him about doing the right thing. And Crawl, like, since then, he doesn't like betray, right? He doesn't go out of his way to kill somebody. I think it's not. I think he's earned the reputation of being a straight edge. I think he's earned it.
Yeah, he's definitely earned it.
Okay, the frat boy thing just throws me off. I guess it just throws me off.Maybe I'm not.
I guess it's like I'm trying to think of like the best. Maybe the frat boy isn't a good analogy. There's an analogy out there, basically somebody who's not like a bad person or anything, and there's nothing like negative, but they're not like a thinker. Like they just happen to be
okay.
They're just kind of following. They just kind of follow a path, and they're not really thinking about why they're on that path. And that's not necessarily bad, but I think that for a lot of Joe's characters, they're always very introspective, and Crawl is like the least introspective character he's ever written. Crawl is like zero introspection, but it seems like he is, but he's really not. He doesn't really. All he does is go, "Whoops, I did that thing before. That's the way things are." I don't know. It's just interesting to me.
Those are the times.
Those are the times.
Okay.
It's always the times, Crawl.
I guess the more we read, the more we'll talk about that idea. But I'll give it a 3 and a knuckle as well. Short chapter, not much happens, but it is nice to see some good being done, right? Finnery gets returned. You see the reunion there. I like the conversation. Like, Crawl's the kind of guy that can get a conversation out of Shivers. And I like that. Out of Shivers now. Shivers and Best of Cold couldn't shut the fuck up, but this Shivers doesn't talk a lot. But he does talk to Crawl. And, they seem to be on, like, decent terms, at the very least. Maybe not buddies, but, they're cordial, and I like to see that. I guess it's just the effect that Crawl has. And then there's a bit of a, little banter between him, Flood, and Shivers. So that's cool. But, yeah, not much happened, so 3 and a knuckle for me as well. All right, so we'll move on to our next segment, which is our best meme of the week. Georgie boy, that's you. Take it away.
So it's been another little quiet one on Answer the Meme Maker this week, which is it is what it is. Those are the times,
Always the times, Jeff.
It's always the times. But they've got this. It's not really a meme, but it's a clip from before they hanged the audiobook, and it was something that I brought up back when we were doing before they hanged all those years ago. And it's the bit when Baez says, "Don't tell me you haven't seen Stranger Things." Obviously, it's taken in the context of the TV show, which wasn't even released when this book came out. So that's the thing.
The way that Baez says it, though, is like he sounds so like modern. The way he says it inside the audiobook, and that's what makes it great, because it just sounds like he's just speaking in a normal conversation. I can't believe you haven't watched the TV show, bro. It's hilarious.
And that's from Trojan Scar Hest on Reddit there, and the caption does say, "I wonder who Baez's favorite character is."
Although,
and
go ahead.
Go ahead. I definitely think it's got to be 11, hasn't it? Because she's got the same powers. She blows people up.
He's like, I have a feeling he'd be overly critical of her. You know, like
Yeah.
she would be good if she was more ruthless, or she would be good if only she understood that X by Z. Or yeah, I think I maybe 11. He would like 11, but I'm trying to think of. You may be right, or or he'd like his favorite character would be the evil scientist. Because he'd be like,
yes, trying to advance
yes.
our knowledge of the
He's like, why are they
esoteric.
mad at? Why are they mad at him? Like this is just progress. look at all the power he's given 11. Anyways,
but it's fun to see that the same thoughts pop up in different people over big periods of time, which is great, and it happens a lot with this series as well, which I'm always happy to see.
It makes me want to like take a whole bunch of clips from different stuff. Like you do catch quite a bit, George, but I always makes you think about that.
Thank you for that great meme, George. And now we'll move on to our next segment, which is our second chapter read through, which is One Day More. And we start off from the perspective of Finry, and this is an interesting one. She isn't feeling so great, obviously. And she could tell that Hal is being awkward now. So we left them when they were embracing on the bridge and they walked away. Now they're on their horses and they're, I guess, frolicking towards the headquarters.
Galloping,
but they're not really galloping. They're not. It's more
cantering,
more trotting.
Oh, yeah. Well said, George. Well said.
Cantering is good. And so, Hal is talking about how the dog man turned up when he did. So I guess he must have came in and helped save the day, at least on the side where the Krina bastards and Stranger fucking arrived. And then also that apparently Colonel Brent was a rock, couldn't have done it without him, and he will want to ask you about his wife. And Finnery's like later, she has to talk to her father first, but really she says there's no way she could face that, which she's eventually gonna have to. And
I don't blame her for that. I mean, I wouldn't want to fucking do that right then either.
Yeah, I don't blame her either. Hal's like, wait, shouldn't you like wash first? Shouldn't you like eat something? And she's like, I got a message from Black Dow. Do you understand? She snaps at him. He's like, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, stupid of me. Of course. And so apparently, from her perspective,
God, he's such a. I mean, I would be very careful with my wife here too. But my God.
Well, listen, I don't blame him. But he keeps, according to her, he kept flipping from fatherly stern to soppy soft. So she feels that maybe he's angry, but didn't have the courage to say so, right? Angry at her for even coming to the North when he did say that earlier that she should have stayed behind. Probably angry at himself for not being able to help when the Northmen came. And then probably he's just angry that he's angry, right?
Yeah.
So, awkward silence. He helps her down. They get to the headquarters, and he says, "I love you," lamely, apparently, and she says, "I love you too." But all
it's
she
like an awkward silence, and he looks at her and he's like, I love you."
Yeah, and then she feels like a creeping dread, which is like, well, I guess we could talk about this in a minute, but she tells him that he should go back down to the Osrung. And he puts up a bit of a fight, a bit of a fight. And it's like a false fight. She goes, "No, I'm safe. They need you more than I do." And then apparently she can almost feel the relief coming off of him to no longer be taunted by his inability to make everything better. So they go their separate ways. She walks to the barn. She does have Hal's coat on. It's nice and cozy. And she walks in and she sees General Mitterick, General Jallenhorn, Colonel Felnig, and her father. And she's like, oh, nice to see him. And then she sees Baez, and she's like, oh, boy. And Baez and Yoru Sulfur. And Mitterick is, talking about, I guess, the progress they made today. That the bridge is in their hands, and his men are crossing the river. He'll have fresh regiments on the north bank. plenty of cavalry and the terrain to make use of it. The standards of the 2nd and 3rd are flying the Northmen's trenches, and tomorrow I'll get Valimir off his ass and into action if I have to kick him across that stream myself. It's like, it's not Valamir's fault. He didn't get the message. But, and then he kind of like stops talking because he sees Finry, and he, and everyone looked. And, she is not probably in the best state. She got hit. She probably has a bruise on her face. Her hair's all jacked up and matted and clotted. And I think even some of her hair got torn out, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So everyone is like shocked to see her except for Baez. Her dad gets up, Lord Marshal Croy. He hugs her. He's like, oh my God, thank the fates you're alive. And he even teared up. Croy. And then
that always makes me really sad when old men cry, and it's so sad here because that he's a good dad and he loves his daughter, and you're just like, no, please, don't cry, it's okay.
Yeah. So, he says like, thank the fates that you're alive, and she says, thank Black Dow, he's the one that set me back. What? Yeah, I met him, spoke to him. He wants to talk. He wants to talk about peace. Everyone's stunned. She persuaded him to let some wounded soldiers go as a gesture of good faith. 60, it was the best she could do. And Jallenhorn goes, wow, you persuaded him to release prisoners? That's crazy, because that's not a thing he does. And then I like how Croy goes, that's my girl. And man, he's so proud of her.
He's so proud.
But Finry's feeling a lot of guilt, obviously. Guilt, and I guess like still coming off the shock of everything. The pride in his voice made her feel sick. But Baez goes, well, describe him. Describe Black Down. She says, tallish, strong built, fierce looking, missing his left ear. He had an older man named Craw with him, a big man with a scarred face and a metal eye. And she goes, this whole thing was strange now that I think about it. And a black-skinned woman. And Baez goes, a thin black-skinned woman wrapped in bandages? And she goes, yup. And he sits back and looks at Yoru, and he goes, they are here. And apparently Yoru's like, I told you so. And so Baez,
you know how rarely Yoru still forgets to say that?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, one up, dude. Fuck you.
That's right. And then Baez, he's like annoyed. He's like, can't anything just be straightforward? And Midoric's confused, like, who are here? And Baez doesn't even answer. And he looks at Croy, who Croy had walked back to his desk and was writing a message. And he asks him, what are you doing, Lord Marshal? And Croy goes, well, it seems a good idea that I should write to Black Dow and arrange a meeting so we can discuss the terms of an armistice. And Baez just says no. And no, what do you mean? It sounds like he's willing to be reasonable. Shouldn't we at least talk to him? And Baez goes, Black Dow's not a reasonable man. His allies are even less so. And he says, besides, you have done so well today, Lord Marshal. Such fine work from you and General Midoric and Colonel Brock and the Dogman. Ground taken in, sacrifices and all that. So I feel your men deserve another crack at it tomorrow. Just one more day, I think. What's one day? And, Finry's like dizzy because she's like, what the fuck? And Croy he was not. What else can he say? He just goes, Lord Baez, a day is just a day. We will strive, of course, with every sinew that is the king's pleasure, but there is a very good chance we will not to be able to secure a decisive victory in one day. And I like how Baez just goes, that's a question for tomorrow. Every ward is only a prelude to talk. But and then he goes, but it's all about who you talk to. It would be best if we kept news of this among ourselves. Such things can be bad for morale. One more day, if you please. And, Crow.
And that's pretty fucking nuts, isn't it? That you got all these dudes out here dying. Mm-hmm. You might lose another 5,000 people tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Baez is just like,
yeah, that's fine.
Whatever.
No biggie.
Just so it can be slightly a little bit more advantageous to me.
I don't think it's even like slightly a little more advantageous. I think he just is like, no, they're the Gurks are here. Fuck that. We're not giving up yet. I don't think he's even considered doing the surrender thing yet because, as we'll see, he is 100% not going to say one more day. So,
yeah.
He does not follow up with that.
Mm-hmm. And so Croy goes, I serve at His Majesty's pleasure. And then Jallenhorn's like, so do we all. And my men are ready to do their duty. And I request the right to lead an assault upon the heroes themselves and redeem myself on the battlefield. Finri at this point is just kind of like disillusioned with the whole thing. She goes, well, no one gets redeemed there. They just get killed on the battlefield. And I like how this part Midderg chimes in. He goes, my division is champing at the bit. Don't you worry about that, Lord Marshal Croy. Don't you worry about that, Lord Baez. And then Baez just says,
chomping at the bit, Lord Marshal. Chomping at the bit.
right. But I love how when he says, don't worry about that, Lord Baez goes, I am not.
That's pretty fun.
So, and then they're talking amongst themselves, and Finri just closes the door, and she, I guess, goes to another room in the barn where maybe her dad was sleeping. And she's just, right now, she's kind of like dealing with all the emotions of being a prisoner, of seeing all the men dying in that hall or that inn where Lord Governor Meade was and everything. Obviously, with what happened with Elise, it kind of like alters your worldview, I guess, from Finri's perspective. And she feels a lot of things. We could talk about that if you want, but she feels absurd, ungrateful, treacherous. She should have been weeping with joy. She, after all, was the lucky one.
It's true.
Yeah, and that's the end of that chapter. Boys, what do you want to rate it? What do you want to talk about?
I like this chapter a lot because of the Croy stuff, and obviously you got Baez, and we all love Baez. Being on screen, Baez is like always takes the cake. But I really like how Finri's guilt is handled because, like, it encapsulates what guilt is like so well. Mm-hmm. Like, she should be happy. She feels guilty about not feeling happy because she should be happy because she's better off than her friend was, and she's actually safe now, and her dad is proud of her. But she also is just like traumatized from the event as a whole, and I love how the guilt is handled in its entirety. Like I think it's done really well. So I think I'm gonna give this a 6 and a knuckle.
6 and a knuckle.
Yeah. I agree with you. Say, I like Croy as well, and I do like Finri's inner monologue in this chapter. But I don't know. It doesn't quite do it for me. I reckon I'm going to give it a 5.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, another short chapter. We see it's a good perspective from Finri. It, like you said, the interaction with Baez and the officers of the army is always a pleasure to witness. Baez is a dick. Croy just was like, hey, man, if we can stop fighting, that'd be great. But, Baez is like, not my desire. But yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to give this. I don't know what to give it. I'm torn between a 5 and a 4, to be honest with you. And it's not that it's bad. It's just like what George said. It doesn't really do it for me too much, except for the last part, especially where Finri's feeling so guilty. I'll split it. 4 and a knuckle. I'll give it 4 and a knuckle. All right, so let's move on through our next segment, which is our character spots. Boys, who are we spotlighting since no one died in these chapters? Wink, wink.
Well, we are going to be highlighting. We were debating between a couple different Northmen, but we decided on Flood.
Howard.
George may still hate him, but we believe that Flood is just a normal old boy, all right? He's been around for a little while. He doesn't seem to be as old. He's definitely not, like, hardcore straight edge. It's true that he maybe left his other boys to die, but you know what? He has a heart. He's also just a survivor. What can you really blame the guy? Also, the man is goddamn, like, who knows? We don't hear from Flood. He doesn't die in this book, to be clear, but we don't hear from Flood, like, ever again after this. And he's got, like, this foot problem. What if he just has an infection and dies right at the end? You know what I mean? Like, he could be in immense pain, but of course the Northman would be like, you pussy. Because he can't complain about it. We don't know. So George is anti-Flood. I am pro-Flood. I like how he talks to Beck, and he's like, No. You earned your name. It's okay. No, and then whenever it's very unique touch how here in a minute we'll see or
Well,
I'm
George,
sorry.
go ahead.
Do we get to that part yet?
Uh,
Where Beck joins the crew? I'm sorry.
he officially, Crawl welcomed him in. Yeah.
Yeah, so whenever he gets welcomed into the crew, he's like, "Do I need to give him the whole rundown and how to be, how to stick with the crew and everything?" And Flood said something interesting and like kind of solemnly. He's like, "No, I think he's learned enough about that." And I don't know. I think that's interesting to me. Go ahead, George. Let's hear your.
I still do think that he did literally leave those guys to fight by themselves.
You think
It's like, oh no, I've got these other younger boys to look after, and then they never show up again. So, all right, okay, whatever you say, Fuzz.
Well, think about it. Remember, when Beck joined that crew, it was a bunch of young kids, and Beck only named.
Yeah, but they could have been somewhere else. They're not going to just stick all those people and put them in one place.
Well, he did split them up.
They might do.
He remember, Beck only named the people that he ended up being with: Stoddard, Colvin, Brait, and Reft. But there were others. Beck noted them, but he just didn't know. He didn't get their names.
Yeah, but what I mean is that like those people, all the new recruits aren't going to be going to one place together, are they?
Well, that's what Flood did. He split them in 2 different houses,
but not even different houses. Like they would have been on different parts of the battlefield.
I don't know about that. If it's his dozen, quote unquote.
Okay. I'm still not for it. I'm still not what I'm gonna say. I still think he was hiding in the cupboard as well.
And if he
was just in a different house.
So Beck is a coward too, right? Is he a shitty, terrible person?
No, I don't think
exactly right, George. You succeeded.
That's not what I'm saying.
I know.
You're just you're being pretty you're hard on Flood there for
I am hard on Flood. It's not his fault.
He's old.
Listen, George. You know what, George? I'll back you up there if you back me up with Forley the weakest.
Oh dear, no, that's
exactly right. Then we come to an impasse, my friend. I tried to be diplomatic.
Well, you're unreasonable, Harrison, with the Forley the weakest slander. I don't understand it. I don't like it. How could you? I think Flood is just a regular schmegular dude. And I think he's tired of leading lads. So that's why he wants to go back to Crawl, where, he just listens to, somebody else. And maybe he feels responsible for the deaths of all those kids, right? And it's like, you know what? I don't want that kind of responsibility anymore. I want to, basically hand that responsibility to somebody else who I just follow and, I follow their orders and everything. So I don't know, George. I don't know. Or maybe it's all a cover. Or his cowardice.
Maybe it is.
Maybe I hope no one notices that I was in a broom closet.
Yeah. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. I don't know.
Maybe. Well,
probably not.
If you have any thoughts, loyal listeners, about Flood, send them our way. Send us a little message. And give us your thoughts on if he's a coward or not a coward, or just a regular schmegular dude. Are you pro-Flood, anti-Flood? Are you just meh about him? Send us your thoughts. All right, so we'll move on to our final segment, which is our third and final chapter read-through. And this one is Bones. And this one is from the perspective of Calder. Calder is not happy, I think we could say, right, boys? He is marching towards the heroes, I guess, where the war chiefs are. A couple of guys are like, hey, what are you doing? And Calder's like, fuck off. And then Foss Deep and Shallow are like, hey, listen, man, we're not going to go up there if you're going to try to get yourself killed. We're, no money is, I like how Shallow is, no money's worth going back to the mud for. Nothing is, in my opinion. And then Deep goes, you know what? That's an interesting point of philosophy you just stumbled upon. What's worth dying for and what is it? So not one we're likely to.
It's just like Joe to have his 2 comedy relief characters state the one of the themes of the book out loud.
It is very much in the character.
It is. And, Calder like, just say and talk shit then. And, he keeps going, but Pale as Snow and White Eye Hansel are keeping up with him. And they're asking, he's like, what are you doing? What are you going to do? And he doesn't, Calder doesn't really answer. And Hansel's like, just keep calm. Your father always kept calm. And Calder goes, fuck what my daddy did. I don't care about that. I'm angry. And he marches, about, and then he passes Kerndon Crawl. Kerndon Crawl's like, Calder, what are you doing? And then he passes them, sees 10 Ways is sitting on a log by the fire, marches right up to him. 10 Ways is like, hey, pretty little Calder, did you help your brother out today? Did you? And then he kind of like notices, like, wait a minute, what the? And then Calder just decks him right in the fucking nose, and then he gets him in he just starts, raining punches on him.
Damn!
Mm-hmm. And then Crawl lifts him off. He's like, well, what the fuck is going on? And then 10 Ways, he gets up, and he's, bleeding from his nose, and he's angry. So he had drew his sword. Now everyone gets quiet. 10 Ways steps over the log. Crawl puts Calder behind him and draws his sword. And then not a moment later, basically everyone has their sword drawn. And then at this point, Calder kind of realized things had gone a little bit further than he planned on. Not that he really planned on anything at all, but, whoopsies. And so he wasn't sure if he felt such pride as he did the moment that a broad 10 Ways nose crunched underneath his knuckles. No way he would have said more to that. No to that feeling again. And switch perspectives. Now we're Beck POV, and Beck and Droft are like, oh, what the fuck? And so now they're all drawing their blades because they don't know, what the fuck's going on. And so we see that obviously it's Crawl and Calder and the dozen on one side, 10 Ways on the other. And Crawl just says, put him away. And it put iron in Beck's bones, the way Crawl said it. And 10 Ways doesn't look like he's going to be taking any steps himself, though. He's like, fuck that. You put him away. And now you could just say, like, they're kind of at an impasse. Crawl tells him again to put the weapons away. 10 Ways says, make me. And then somebody says, I'll give it a try. And who comes skulking in from the shadows, hood up and everything, chewing on a chicken bone, but wearing a bleh.
He's such a goon.
Mm-hmm. He really is.
He is. He's literally a comic book character. It's so fucking funny.
Yeah.
Walking around in his cloak out in the darkness, like, I bet he found a perfect spot for that.
Oh, he
just
definitely
to be
did. He was
completely
waiting.
theatrical.
He was totally waiting for the right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And 10 Ways goes, my fight isn't with you, Wirren. And then Beck, for Beck, it all came together that he had heard songs about Wirren of Bleh, Cracknut Wirren, how he'd been given the father of swords, how he killed his 5 brothers, how he hunted the Shimble wolf in the endless winter of the utmost north, held the pass against the countless Shanka with only 2 boys and a woman for company, bested the sorcerer Darum la Priot in a battle of wits, and bound him to a rock for the eagles. Might be his name was the hardest name in the whole north these days, and standing right there in front of Beck, close enough to lay a hand on, although that probably wasn't a great idea to do that. If he would have done it, which he didn't. And then, Wirren says, if you're fighting with me, well, you drew on Calder. When you drew on Calder, you drew on Crawl. And when you drew on Crawl, you drew on me, and Jolly on Cumber, and Wonderful, and Flood, even though he went to go piss. And also this lad here, whose name I've forgotten. He's pointing at Beck. So he basically he goes, my fight isn't with you either, but I'll still kill you if it's called for. So, and then Broad goes, so what? He goes, shall I draw? And remember that if the father of swords is drawn, it must be blooded. That's the way it's been since before the old time, and the way it must be still and must always be. And then they're all still kind of standing there, and Beck feels like, doesn't look like 10 Ways is going to give up here, though. And then we hear another person enter the fray. This person isn't so nice. We hear, what the fuck? And this is blacked out. And now Beck knew immediately this is blacked out. He goes, with the chain, the, scar, the face and everything. Oh, this is blacked out, no question. Who beat Bethod's men 6 times in the long winter, then burned Kinying to the ground with its people in the houses, who fought the Bloody Nine in the circle and nearly won, was left with his life and bound to serve, fought alongside him and read 3 trees and told Duru thunderhead and Harding grim, as tough as a crew has ever walked the Northman since the age of heroes. And of course, aside from the dog man, he was of which the last drawing breath. And then he betrayed the Bloody Nine, killed him who men said couldn't die, and stole Starling's chair for himself, blacked out right before him now, protector of the North or stealer of it, depending on who you asked. He had never dreamed of coming so close to the man. Now we get, after that bit of exposition.
It's a good bit of exposition. It's nice to hear the story from somebody else. Because obviously we know everything about these characters, but it's interesting to see how Beck thinks about it.
It does make you, though, wonder, right? Like, we know everything that Black Dow did is mostly true, except for the killing, certain people. But
yeah, we don't know that.
we talking about I said certain people. You don't know.
Oh, okay.
He says that he didn't kill women and children. Just saying. Anyways, there's we know a lot of that stuff is true. Maybe some deviations, maybe some unknown facts that people made up. But how much of Weirens is true? Because Weirens is a lot more fantastical, but also Weirens a pretty fantastical dude. Maybe it's all true. Just saying.
Let's not give the Weirin lovers any more ammunition.
Well, we have to. There's a time and place, Jeffrey, and I would say
never.
If we know as book readers that the majority of Black Dow's lore is accurate, even if there are some deviations and some exaggerations, then by happenstance, don't you think that for sure that at least half of what Weirin's background is true?
It's all lies. It's all lies.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that it's all wrapped up in mysticism, and it's probably a lot less dramatic than it's made out to be.
Yeah.
I especially like the bit about the sorcerer, especially what we know about magic. Apart from outside the Magi and Eaters, like he's probably just like some guy.
Well,
hit some robes. He's like, aha, flash.
That's probably true.
And Weirin just kills him.
That's true.
Like, oh my god, you killed the sorcerer.
That probably is what actually happened, but we do know in the far north and out past the Corona, there are sorcerers that wield magic of some kind. That even Craw has even faced in Sharp Ends. Okay. They fight sorcerers.
Oh yeah.
And that guy actually does have some sort of magic, whether it's fucking placebo shit or not. It's some form of magic. So there is something going on there. So whenever he says that, he probably did kill somebody at least perceived as a witch. And the Northmen know what witches are. So I'm just saying.
I just imagine some guy in front of Weirin just like he blows dust at him. Like it's like that magic.
Yeah.
Well, anyways,
I also want to talk about. We haven't talked that much about the Father of Swords either, and I do find it interesting that it's almost certainly a one of the Maker's swords, right?
No,
because we see the symbol on the hilt.
No, I thought it came from a meter, right?
Well, yeah, but that's just like the standard story for a sword, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
that is a real thing that you can do. You can make swords out of meteorite metal.
Right. I don't think this is I don't know.
So we know. I always thought that it was. I'm sure there's a mention of a symbol on it somewhere, the same as Logan's sword.
Adeptus, get in here.
There is said to be that there's a mark on the sword. Yes, there is supposed to be a mark, and so it's implied that yes, it's probably one of the Maker's weapons. But what's weird about it is why is it here and how did it get to the far north?
And the metal is different. If it's the Maker did it, it would have been that gray dull metal.
I have an interesting theory, right? So remember Fenris the Feared and how somebody said that she dug him out of a hill somewhere, right? So maybe it was his sword originally. I mean, the proportions fit.
Yeah, but why wouldn't Fenris have grabbed it?
Yeah, but maybe Weirin wasn't like around in the area. At the
I do
time.
like
maybe
that idea.
Just somewhere else.
I do like that.
Because we know that Fenris the Feared was, the crew and Logan don't know anything about him, so it must have been in that 10 years they've been exiled that he was like discovered or found or whatever. So maybe they found the sword previously, and it's been going through all the generations, like they say. But they just didn't find Fenris. It was like buried somewhere else.
Okay. That being said, following up on that path, I think you may be right. I think it may be along the same lines. maybe not Fenris's grave specifically, but if Fenris was buried up there, there's got to be other weird shit that was buried up there that fled after the big battle in Alcus and all that. So maybe it is that. Maybe it is an old maker weapon, or maybe it's a weapon made by some, by Kalul or Glustrad or Juvent, and maybe it is some sort of ancient weapon. It does seem to be particularly special because I don't think that thing gets cleaned, other than the blood off of it. And there is a certain mysticism. Yeah, it's Weirin. He made up a lot of shit, but I do think he was the sword was passed down to him, and he was given a set of rules to be like, hey, you need to make sure that you're doing X, Y, Z.
Wait.
And he, being a mystic person, just went all out with it.
Wait. I just realized something. Every instance of someone having the maker's sword, like Logan or whatever, correct me if I'm wrong, it was said it never needed to be sharpened.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Does he sharpen it?
Weirin sharpens this sword.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Maybe it's not the maker then.
But it is an ancient. There's a mark on it, and it is an ancient sword, and it is pretty cool. And it probably is some sort of slight mysticism, like it is.
It probably did get carved from that meter, right? It probably did get,
Yeah, maybe fucking Glustrad made us some cool shit, or maybe somebody else made some cool shit up in the far north. Yeah, something fled, or maybe this is whack. Maybe the fucking Schenker made it. I don't know. The Schenker are good at making things.
They're terrible at making things. They are terrible at making things. However, it would be hilarious if the one good thing they made was the Father of Swords.
Or maybe they used to be better at it. But then also, if they were made by the Shanker, then by extension, they were made by Canadius. So,
I mean, kind of. I mean, you're that's kind of like saying, well, technically, America is because of the UK. I mean, you wouldn't be no America without the UK.
I mean, that is literally true.
You know what? I think this is good material for a video, a theory video, George.
It is.
Relics.
It is.
So yeah, and so we get back to Black Dow, and Black Dow's pissed, and he looks at Craw. He goes, "Aren't you supposed to be keeping the peace?" And Craw's like, "That's what I'm doing. I'm trying." And he goes, "Oh yeah. This is a peaceful fucking picture." And he says, "No one draws any steel without my say so. So put them up, all of you." And then 10 Ways they don't. And 10 Ways goes, "That boneless little fucker broke my nose." And Dow says, "Oh, did he spoil your looks? Did he? Do you want me to kiss it better? All right, let me frame this in terms you fucking half-heads can understand. Anyone still holding a blade by the time I get to 5 is stepping into the circle with me, and I'll do things like I used to before old age softened me up. 1. And then I like how Beck says he didn't even need to get to 2. Everyone just...
I love he does the classic what you do with kids, All right, if you don't put it away, I'm gonna get really angry. 1, and they're like, oh.
But he laid out the challenge. He's like, "You will get in the circle with me," and so like that's a legit challenge. So everyone, Beck didn't realize it. Wonderful had to whisper in his ear, like, "You might want to put that away." He's like, "Oh shit!" And he hurriedly, sheathes his sword. And then Weirin is there, still kind of like. He's like, I'm a little tempted. And then Dow's like, "Another time, you idiot."
But it's interesting that he says that, though. I know we just put a whole theory rant about Weirin here. But it's interesting that Black Dow does that because, of course, there's kind of subtlety that, is he worried about fighting him? I think so. Because, Black Dow is very, very good.
Yeah, Dow's not stupid. Right? And I mean, somebody as good as Weirin could mean the end of Black Dow, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give the Weirin lovers that. I'll give the Weirin lovers that. But I like how Weirin says he's tempted, but he's not outright going to do it. So there's also that mutual respect on that side.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Dow goes, "Oh, brave Prince Calder, so honored. What happened at the old bridge?" And then he says, "Scale got killed." It was like, I heard. I'm weeping a sea of tears. That's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is what happened to my bridge. And so, he says that Scale fought as hard as he could, as anyone could. It's okay, good for Scale. What about you? It doesn't look like you fought that hard. And then Calder goes, "I was ready to. And then I got this." He shows him the piece of paper, the order. It's from Miderick, the Union general. And Dow snatches it, and he looks at it. So I wonder if Dow can read Union. And then Calder was saying that there are Union men in the woods out west ready to come across, and it's lucky that he found out, because if he had gone to help Scale, they would have taken them in the flank, and then there's a good chance a lot of them would have been overrun and dead, right? And then, or rather than arguing over whether I got bones. And Dow says, I don't think anyone's arguing we got bones. Just sat there behind the wall, did you? He goes, well, that and sent to 10 ways for help. And then I like how it says Dow's eyes slid sideways. It's like, well. And then 10 ways goes, well, what? And then Dow goes, did he send for help? And then we know this person, it says an old boy with a scar down his face and an eye on that side, milky white. This is White Eye Hanzo. He goes, spoke to 10 ways myself. Told him Scale needed help, but Calder couldn't go on account of the Southerners across the stream. Told him the whole thing. And then White Eye says, he said he was busy. And then Dow goes, busy? You just sat there, huh? And then 10 Ways goes, I can't just move as soon as that bastard tells me to. And don't forget, Dow had ordered 10 Ways to come to help whenever it was needed. Remember? And so Dow kind of lost his shit. And he goes, you sat on that hill with Scarling's finger up your ass and you fucking watched as the Southerners took my bridge? And 10 Ways at this point goes like, there are no Southerners over the river. That's all lies. It's just always like lies like he always tells. You know, lies and excuses and bloody talk of peace and blah, blah, blah. And Dow just says, enough. I don't give a fuck if there are Union men out west or if there aren't. I care whether you do as you're told. And so he goes to 10 Ways. He goes, you're not going to be sitting watching tomorrow. Oh, no, 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 no. And neither are you, Calder. No, 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 no. He says, Prince of Nothing Much. Prince of Nothing Much. He goes, your sitting days are over, the both of you. You two are going to be down on that wall together, side by side, arm in arm from dawn to dusk, making sure this shit that you cooked up doesn't start sinking any worse. You're going to do what I brought you fucking idiots for, which is fighting the fucking Union. And then Calder says, but what if they are across that stream? We're already stretched thin. And then Dow, he fucking flips out. It's a fucking war. You fight them, all right? You're the planner, aren't you? Plan something, you great trickster. Do something. He goes, you wanted your brother's place? Then deal with it, or I'll find the man who will. And he says, any man that doesn't do his bit tomorrow, anyone with a taste for sitting out, by the dead, I'll cut the bloody cross in you, and I'll hang you, and I'll burn you, and I'll make such an end for you, the very song of it will turn the bards white. And he goes, am I leaving any room for doubt? And Calder and 10 Ways are like, no.
Sorry, Dad.
And so
I really do like this how this whole thing is just handled like like a family squabble.
Yeah, it is, right? You're right. And then I was like, that's the end of this, and he just walks away. And then 10 Ways and his men they go their way. They sit down, and Crawl tells Calder to go with him, so they go their own way. And then Weirin goes, yeah, shame, I was enjoying that. And then he looks at Beck. He's like, oh, yeah, what is your name, by the way? And he goes, just Beck. And he goes, is every day with you guys like this? And Weirin goes, no, not every day. And he smiles, and he goes, only a precious few. Jesus Christ. So then we switch perspectives back to Crawl now, and he has Calder, and he's marching him away from the fire down the hillside. And he goes, what the fuck are you doing? You could have got us all killed. And obviously, Calder says that Scale's dead. Because of that fucker, Scale is dead. And Crawl feels bad, Remember, he nursed Calder as a babe. Well, he didn't physically nurse him. He took care of him,
Well, he also, he also did, by proxy, no doubt he spent plenty of time with Scale, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And Crawl's like, listen, I'm sorry for that, but, adding more deaths isn't going to help. Jesus Christ, I might just die from the excitement. He still feels his heart pounding, right? And then Calder's like, he swears, I'm going to kill him. Oh, I'm going to kill him. And Crawl goes, oh, shit, there's actually like some purpose there. He actually might believe it. And he tells him to save it for the Union for tomorrow. And he goes, why? My enemies are here. 10 Ways sat there while Scale died, sat and laughed. And Crawl says, you're angry because he sat there or because you did? Which is like, oh, Zane. And he goes,
Which is probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Almost.
He knows him.
Because just thinking about it now, right? Did we talk about this last time? But, if you intercept an order that says that they're going to do something, doesn't that mean they're not going to do it anymore because you've intercepted it?
Well,
most of the time.
Well, no, because Calder said there's probably gonna be more orders after this.
Okay, yeah.
And
Well, yes,
That
yeah.
still sounds like
but no,
rationalizing.
but
Well,
listen,
but wouldn't remember Midrick was getting frustrated that Valamir wasn't attacking, so he probably sent another messenger,
Okay.
right?
I don't think he. Well, even
Okay.
let's assume he didn't, right? If Calder was using the tactical brain that he does have and is capable of using, he would have known I need to attack right now with my full force while there is a delay, and with the knowledge that they could counterattack. He should have attacked immediately, soon because in that right now, that even if they send another letter, right then is the time to go.
And it definitely seems like Calder was kind of on the fence anyway. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, I hope they don't get in trouble. And then it's like, oh, they are in trouble. What do I do?
Yeah.
And this is sort of like a convenient excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there's Calder could. I mean, he did the smart thing, he did a thing where I don't know if it's smart, but he did send to 10 ways, which that was Dow had said send to 10 ways if you need help. But I agree, Harrison. He could have immediately attacked and set up for a counterattack. He could have maybe left some men behind. Something he could have. There are things he could have done, but his hands were kind of tied, but they weren't tied all the way. In a way.
They weren't tied as much as he's acting like. He could have done something, and he knows that.
Yeah. So Crawl goes, I loved your father in the end. I love you like the son I never had. But why is it that the pair of you always had to take on every fight you were offered? There's always going to be more, and he'll stand by him if he can, but there's other things to think about, right? And Calder's like, yeah, keeping your crew alive, not sticking your neck out, doing the right thing, blah, 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 blah. And Crawl, he snaps, and he goes, you fucking idiot, I have to keep the peace. I'm in charge of Dow's Carl's now. I'm his second, and I can't, blah, blah, blah. And then Calder, he interrupts him. He's like, wait, what? You're guarding him? And he has like a mad glint in his eye. An eager glint, and Crawl, and he's like, you're at his back with your sword drawn, that's your job. And Crawl's like, oh no, don't you do it, don't you say it. And then Crawl's trying to get away from it, and Calder's like hugging him, and he's like, you could do it, you could put it into this. And Crawl's like, shut up. And then Calder says it, he goes, kill him. And nope, he's he gets away from him. And then Calder's like, what the fuck? How many men have you killed? That's what you do. You're a killer. And he says, I'm a named man. He's like, yeah, okay, so you're better at it than most. What's killing one more? And this time for a purpose, you could stop all this. You don't even like the guy. And he goes, doesn't matter. He's chief. And he goes, yeah, Calder says he's chief now, but stick an axe in his head, he's just mud, and no one will care a shit then. And then Crawl says, I will. And now they're just watching each other. And, Crawl's hand is on his sword. And Calder goes, are you going to kill me? He goes, of course not. But I'm going to have to tell Dow. And then silence. Calder goes, tell him what exactly? And says that, that you asked me to kill him. Silence again. He goes, I don't think he'll like that very much. Nope. And Calder goes, I think cutting the bloody cross in me, then hanging me, then burning me is the least of what he'll do. Crawl says, yep, which is why you better run. Run where? Wherever you like. I'll give you a start. I'll tell him tomorrow. I have to tell him. That's what Three Trees would have done. And that sounds like a particularly lame reason to Crawl, but whatever. But Calder says 3 trees got killed for nothing out in the middle of nowhere. And Crawl says doesn't matter. And then I like how Calder keeps going. He's like, you ever think you should be looking for another man to imitate? He goes, well, I gave my word. Killer's honor. Swear it, did you? On Scarling's cock or whatever. And Crawl says, it doesn't matter. I gave my word. And then Calder again says to Black Dow, to Black Dow, he tried to have me killed a few nights back, and I'm supposed to just wait on my hands, waiting for him to do it again? The man's more treacherous than winter, which doesn't make sense, but whatever. And Crawl says, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. I said yes. As in yes to being him being his second. And Crawl goes, and Calder just kind of nods, oh, gave you a word. And good old Crawl's a straight edge, right? And then, it's kind of like this back and forth where he goes, I have to tell him. Calder goes, but tomorrow you'll give me a start. And he starts backing away. He goes, you won't tell him. I know you, Crawl. Raised me from a babe. You got more bones than that. You're not Black Dow's dog, not you. And then Crawl's like, it's not a question about being a dog or bones or anything like that. I gave my word, and I'll tell him tomorrow. And Calder says, no, you won't. Yes, I will. And then Calder goes, no, you won't. And he just walks away. And Crawl's just standing there frowning and gritting his teeth and just kind of like angry. and he feels pretty hollow. He hasn't felt this hollow since Wast Never had sold him out and tried to kill him after 8 years a friend, and would have done it too if it hadn't been for Weirin. Doesn't know who's gonna get him out of this particular scrape. This time it was him doing the betraying, and he'd be doing it to somebody, whatever he did, right? It's always always do the right thing. Sounds like an easy rule to stick to, but when's the right thing the wrong thing? That's the question, and that is the end of the chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
I like to see Craw's code of conduct. There's kind of like rules that he's written for himself that really come back to bite him in the ass a lot. Like he's always got conflict with himself. Like in this, or in this case, is a conflict with himself because it's like, well, I care this much about this and this at the same time. Like, how do I reconcile that? But then I find it funny as well. I do enjoy this chapter. I reckon I'll give it a 6. How about you guys?
I mean, this is kind of like we get a lot, like we get the lore background behind Weirin and Black Dad. We have this escalation of tension. We realize that, despite trying to avoid it, Crawl's like kind of the pendulum that the whole North army is swinging on right now. And it's a very interesting dynamic. It gets pretty tense, and you just don't know what's going to happen because it feels like, now that you're this far into Joe's works, that you're kind of outside of the normal predictions of how a story may go, and I think it's frustratingly sad that Black Dow is like having to deal with everybody like he's some fed up dad, and everyone's just acting like children. Like it really, they kind of mention it, but they really sells you on the fact that the North is barely being held together right now, and it's very fragile. And I don't know. I think it's done really, really well, and I think that this thing where basically he's like, you should do it. It puts, like you said, George, it puts Craw on the back foot for his own little rules and everything. But also, it's kind of an asshole thing that Calder would even do this. It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, Calder's an idiot. Yeah, I'll give this a 6 and a knuckle. I like the chapter. It's good. Like you said, illustrates all the how the North is kind of just barely held together by the threat by Black Dow's existence.
Yeah.
At this point, and it's nice that we see Calder being, having some spine and punching 10 ways, and for once just kind of getting into some action. But he's an idiot. He's an idiot. He should have, why would you do that to Craw, right? Because Craw. I mean, we don't know if Craw's gonna tell him or not, but there's a chance. Yeah. And you don't be patient. Maybe come to Craw a little bit later, the next day or something, to see how things go. But no, you fucking just
you idiot.
Idiot. And I find it hard. I mean, I guess I don't know. I find it hard to believe that Calder didn't know that already. Wouldn't it have been well known that Dow has a new second and it's Kern and Craw?
I mean,
no.
I think this is literally just. We see him stalk away at the end of his last chapter, and he just walks straight up.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. You're right.
I do think it is stupid for another reason though, because I think, Calder should know better than to just say this to anybody who's loyal like Craw is anyway. And the fact that I think he's kind of trying to do damage control at the end, but he's like, "Oh no, you won't do it. No, you won't do it," because he knows that he will, but he's kind of. But also, again, his brother's just been killed, and he is angry about it more himself than anybody else. I think. So no, but it is really interesting chapter. It is good.
By the way, my rating is 7.
Nice. Well, that's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support means so much.
Join us next week as we cover The King's Last Hero, My Land, and The Standard Issue.
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media. Check out the website and send us an email at circleoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And please make sure to rate and review us. Thank you all again for listening.
Here's a peaceful fucking picture.